Okay, you can hit
It,
record.
yeah, it is wild time. So Amy McCord, joining me from Portland and from the NTEN offices. Hi, Amy.
Hi. It
How are
feels
you?
so, it feels very strange being
Yeah.
in a deserted downtown Portland in a deserted office building coming to pick up my equipment, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's certainly, it looks strange because that's normally a
Oh,
bustling
totally.
place, you know?
Yes, totally. Like driving over the bridge in the morning, which is normally, 5 miles an hour. Everybody's coming downtown to work. It was like people were speeding past me.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So how are you? How's the team? Talk to me about the NTEN team and how they're doing in the wake of all this COVID-19 stuff that we're wrestling with right now.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
I am I'm doing okay. I have like a giant building full of privilege, so I'm pretty safe and sheltered as of right now and doing okay. Mentally and emotionally doing pretty good because we have a 3-year-old, and it's kind of hard to be sad around a 3-year-old who is just like constantly making up the most ridiculous stories you've ever heard and
Sure.
wanting to play games. And we read just a lot of books,
Yeah.
and that means you get to like sit down and spend an hour reading kids books that are filled with hope and joy and happiness, or like absurdity.
Yeah.
So that
Yes.
feels pretty good.
Yes.
The team is doing okay. We are a team that kind of one of the strengths that we have, we have 15 people on
Hmm.
staff at NTEN, and one of our strengths is a pretty good job of operating in ambiguity. And that usually serves us well because we're a community-centered organization. So we don't necessarily know the future. We are there as like a facilitator of what needs do the nonprofits have.
Sure.
But at this time, that kind of shifts over to being a team that's able to like find a path forward when the whole world is the ambiguous, like uncertainty pool.
Sure.
So that's okay. But that's the team.
Yeah.
All of the team's partners, work in other places that aren't NTEN.
Yeah.
We have staff whose partners are teachers or work in infant health.
Hmm.
Like they're as a team we can talk to each other and be in a shared space, but as individual families, folks are, I mean, just like everyone else, they're dealing with a lot and trying to hold a lot of concurrent emotions at the same time,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I would say that as I've been having these conversations, um, I'm encouraged by the prioritization on connection,
Mm-hmm.
right? And mostly internet-based connection, but still connection.
Yes.
And I'm so encouraged by that, and I think that that is a part of the resiliency that all of us are carrying through this kind of odd moment that we're
Yeah, I've
in.
seen a big effort online of folks trying to reframe the idea of social distancing as physical distancing
Yeah.
and upping social connection,
Oh, I love
right?
that.
Yeah, we are not supposed to be more than 6 feet, apart, but we should not be, you know, not talking to each other. Like
Exactly.
text every person you know, get
Right.
on, video chat, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last couple of weeks have been interesting and challenging,
Rough. They've been
rough.
real rough. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want you to walk through those couple of weeks and the idea behind it and why I'm asking and why I want you to resurface a lot of those rough parts is, we work with so many nonprofits who are struggling with the same decisions that you've made over the last 2 weeks
Hmm.
and had to make some really heavy calls and are grieving as a part of that while still trying to serve their constituent base while they're seeing an increase in need. So like you said, you're holding in balance all these emotions at once. So
Right.
walk through these 2 weeks and
Yeah,
ultimately what led to the decision to shift NTC.
totally. Never say never is my first piece of advice.
Okay.
um, like 3 weeks ago, getting towards the end of February, we had an all-staff NTC meeting. NTC is the Nonprofit Technology Conference, our conference that we ultimately had to cancel. So we have weekly NTC meetings leading up to the conference anyway. So we were talking about coronavirus, and folks, were encouraged to ask whatever questions they had. And one of the scenarios we're playing out is like, is there a scenario in which we cancel the conference? And of course, this is 3 weeks ago. This was before there was any of the lockdowns or shutdowns or anything. And we were like, no. I mean, maybe some people won't come if that's a thing that happens, but why would we cancel the NTC? We know what it means for the community. Like, sure, we know what it means for us as an organization, but as an organization that is here to do this work for the community, we know that these folks really rely on this as their one point of professional development.
Yeah.
So, no, of course there wouldn't be. And then, of course, like never say never, time goes on.
Those 21 days made a huge difference.
Just days.
Yes.
And I think part of what was influencing us was, yes, our conference is happening in Baltimore, which, a lot of the East Coast was later on some of this because it wasn't the necessarily like early points of infection.
Sure.
But our office is in Portland and Seattle and Washington, and then right below us, San Francisco, were two like really big hotspots.
Right.
So the feeling as like part of the West Coast was like, this is coming, what if we cannot fly to the conference? Like, what if we as the staff can't go put it on? What conference would that be?
Sure.
Which are usually not the ideas that you're juggling when you're thinking about changing or modifying or canceling an event.
Right.
A lot of what we were hearing in the event management industry was also really sad. And that was, even just like 48 hours before we canceled the NTC, when the mayor of DC had said, we're banning events over a certain size, we were hearing from conference planners that, okay, we obviously can't have our event, but the convention center is telling us that they're technically still open. So that the event space didn't close, so now it's on you to pay those penalties because you chose to cancel, right? So there were just all of those like big things out of our control, but the thing that did feel like it was in our control, and what prompted us to hold on as long as we did, is that like even up to the 30 minutes before our email went out that night saying it was canceled, we were getting emails and phone calls all day, every day saying, please do not cancel the conference.
Yeah.
This conference is my one time to be out professionally. This is my one time to get what feels like progressive or even just neutral training, because I live in an area that doesn't have diversity of, politics or thought. This is my one thing that gets approved because it's the one thing I can claim is related to my job title.
Yeah.
Please don't take this away. And that was just so hard to hear, as an organization so focused on our community. This wasn't like, well, we're just going to hold this, fun event. This is the thing that community members have built, and we don't want to have to take it away. But at the end of the day, we got to that place where it felt like either we're not going to be able to go there because we're based on the West Coast, or this, all of this happened in like 7 days, going from everything's fine to everything is canceled. And we kept thinking, and our conference is actually another 7 days out. So even if today feels however it feels, we just had to accept that we could truly not anticipate what even 24 hours later would be.
Exactly.
And from a marketing perspective, we as a team said, we are going to own this message. It's going to be a lot better for our community that we have a message and we are telling it to them than we are all just at the whim of whatever is going on. So even though it's not going to be fun and it's not going to be joyous, it's better that we own the responsibility and the control in this situation that we can have, which is minimal, but we can own it and hold it and message around that. And it was very hard, I cry at every NTC. I cry with staff meetings. Like, I love people, like, it's great.
Right.
But I don't think I have cried more in 24 hours than I did that day.
Yeah.
I don't think other staff have cried that much at work. Because even when you're doing the right thing and you're ready to say it, in the background, we knew what the spreadsheet looked like of all the bills we were still going to have to pay.
Right.
And we
that's
knew
the other part. And that's the thing that, like, the animal welfare organization who has their golf tournament, this week or next week or whatever, or, whatever other organization who we're in event season is wrestling with this same thing. That's the thing that I'm so struck by is, man, increased need, change in the way that you communicate with everyone. And by the way, you've got this P&L that's sitting there in front of you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was the thing where, I told myself, myself and the conference director, we had decided late at night, the night before we canceled, that we were going to have to do this. And so I told everybody in the morning, we're having an all staff meeting. You are clearing your calendars. Like, nothing is happening today that is not related to this. And told all the staff in the morning, this is what we're going to have to do. This is what it's going to financially mean for us, but it's going to be okay. Like, we'll make this okay. And like, let's divide up who needs to work on what part of the message, sponsors or speaker, like, folks are going to have other questions. And, we worked straight through until 6:00 that night when the message went out, and we got it done. But other than that morning conversation with staff, which was like an hour, making sure folks had plenty of unrushed space to say what they wanted to say, to express how they were feeling, to ask questions, and sit in that space together. And then working on the final edits of the message at the end of the day. The rest of my day was spent calling folks and crying and telling them this news is not public, it's about to be public. And what I really want is to be able to say that we are going to be okay because you have stood up and given us some money to make sure we don't go under because of this. And that way, I am being totally honest with you. And I have been told, folks, if we can get through all of this and there's net positive, I will give your money back. Because this is not making money. This is about getting us through, right? And we have an incredible community. And when we sent that message out at 6, we were able to say Microsoft, Google, and EveryAction, who were top sponsors of the conference, who already knew they were losing all their money, from the conference, also had already told me that day, and these are giant companies.
Massive companies.
I called them at 11. And they were calling me back at 3:00. We have money for you. We believe in you. We will make this happen, which just made me cry more, of course.
It's a whole second tier of sobbing.
I feel happy. What's happening now? And, so that covered a part of it. And then we continue to this day to just be so surprised a week later how many folks continue to fill out we created a form, and folks are donating their registration fees back to us. And it is incredible how many people are doing that, how many folks have made donations. We have former board members who all on their own created a peer fundraising campaign and started sending that around. And all of that happened instantaneously, not with our prompting, but from a marketing, if this is a conversation for other marketers to think about, because we were totally honest the whole time. We never spun anything. I told staff, whether it was spin or not, we're going to be okay. But to the public, we said, this is the truth. This is really hard for us. This is where we're at. These folks are already saying that they're going to step up and help us. And the way we get through is that we need more of you to help. And we didn't say, this is how you have to help. We just said help. And that created the space, I think, for folks to say, hey, here's the thing I can do. and offer that up. And so much of staff time after that really hard 24 hours was then like 72 hours of incredible gratefulness, liking every tweet on Twitter,
Yes.
sending
Yes.
around other people's fundraising campaigns. It just has felt like a huge buoy in this
Right.
really hard time. And, we still have things we have to work through. We have contracts we have to negotiate, but it feels so much more hopeful in a
Yeah.
really hard time than it did before we were public about it.
Thinking about it, like you said, from the marketing sense, there's the resiliency of the human spirit, right? And then there's also the loyalty of donors, and your community, the NTC community, of which I'm proud to be a part of,
Yeah.
is incredibly loyal. But
Mhm.
everyone has their Star Trek, and every nonprofit has their loyal donors. And so it's, I know that there are stories just like this all over the country that are happening. I mean, we've seen folks with food banks in certain markets that, they are generating more revenue online in the last 7 days than they do in half their year, right? Because of they're being vulnerable about the need. And so you're right. It's about that loyalty and belief in the community that you've worked hard and your team has worked hard to create, so
Right.
that now it pays off, right? Or doesn't pay off. Payoff's not the right way to say it, but they're showing you that loyalty and support.
Right. I mean, I think that's a big thing about, we think about all of the folks in our community as our community, not necessarily donors
Right.
versus sponsors versus folks
Right.
who do a certain program. And I think having organizations take that approach can help you, again, not try and anticipate your ask of each of those groups or what they're going to want to do with you, but treating them as your community, being really open and honest with them, and creating space to say, these are the places where we're struggling.
Yeah.
How can you help us get this fixed?
Yeah.
Because right now I see so many people sharing such creative solutions to things too, and there are probably things that are going to get you through that you didn't even anticipate would be of value to you. And just
Absolutely.
really approaching this with that goal of creating space for that to happen from your community members.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that it's great. And I love that you continue to see those things happen. Just, this is something that is going to go out to help encourage folks. And you've already said so much, but is there anything that you would reiterate to folks who are struggling right now on looking at that stack of bills or looking at their annual budget and wondering what they're going to do if they're not seeing a surplus like some other folks are seeing?
Right.
What steps they should take or how they should center themselves as they walk through this?
I mean, I think we've talked a lot about community in our conversation here, but my number one piece of advice, like we did in our process, was to center your staff first. Because if you as an organization can't do that, you're not going to have an honest answer for your community, right? So do whatever you need to do. Cancel whatever. If you need time today to sit down with all of your staff and just talk about it and be honest and say, because your staff might have creative solutions too. Your staff might elect to technically be fired so that they can be on unemployment. And like there's so many, I'm not necessarily suggesting that. I'm just saying there's things that maybe aren't your go-to that other members of your team, it might work for them to do those things. You just don't know. And this is such a time of uncertainty that it can't be a time of assumption. So sit with staff and open up that space for them to say what they need, what they are scared of, what they are hopeful for, what they need, and create your plans from there. Don't try and create your plans just yourself, in your room. Create that space all together. And of course, now it means you're probably doing that on a big video chat.
Right, exactly.
In the same room. So you may need to think about other strategies for helping folks feel safe and ready to engage in what can feel like a much more distant, video conference setting. But I really think you need to center staff. Once you have done that, you've made whatever plans, you've figured out contingencies, whatever, then it's going to be so much lighter to move forward and say, to your community what your plans are, what your needs are, because you don't have to worry that now staff are going to read into what you just said publicly as some other thing that they don't know about. They're going to know that they know the full truth. And now all of you are responsible for moving that message to the community.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's about that. It's the concentric circles of community, right? Because you're talking about, let's hone in on your primary community first, your organization, your staff. Then let's take it a little bit further into our volunteers and so on and so forth out in the market of having an aligned truth. And I think that that's true. I mean, it is, the thing that I love right now with such a greater remote workforce overall that we're seeing is I love the, even in our social feed, seeing the pictures of 40 and 50 faces on a Zoom call or whatever it is. Like that's encouraging because you see people tapping into community to prioritize staying connected and collaborating on creative solutions, which is what's called for right now.
Right. And I think the other thing to remember, just as you're saying, this kind of like forced reminder of everyone's actual humanity. Like, we're not just capitalist workers. We are people and humans with families and lives. And I think approaching those staff conversations with that recognition to say, like, when you're checking in with someone, it might just not be what's on your to-do list. Like, part of their to-do list might be trying to figure out how they get someone out of the hospital that was there already for some other related issue, and now they can't even go visit them because the hospital's locked down. Like, there could be things that are incredibly stressful, weighing on your staff, that make it so whatever's on their work to-do list, like, is irrelevant and cannot even be done. So finding ways to embrace the humanity of everybody so that we don't burn ourselves out over nothing, when the most important thing right now is not that.
Yeah, totally agree. Amy, you're the best, and I really appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Yay! Thanks for the conversation. I'm glad it wasn't quite as traumatic as I, for a moment, thought it might go.
Oh yeah, no, of course not. So, okay, well, stay safe, be well, and we'll talk to you very soon. Okay.
Great.
All right. See ya.